This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 500 of the Stable Scoop Radio Show. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Our sponsors this week are horselovers.com and you, our auditors. On today's special 10th anniversary episode of the Stable Scoop Radio Show, not only do we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Stable Scoop, it's episode number 500, and this is the first show that was ever on the Horse Radio Network, which means that it's also the 10th anniversary of the network as well. Joining me for this episode is the person that helped start it all, my friend and first co-host ever, Helena B. And we have each picked our top 5 episodes from the last 10 years, and we're going to share them with you. But now, let's take a listen to the first theme we had from day one.
Welcome to the Stable Scoop, with weekly shows delivered right to you. With Helena and Glenn the Geek, live from the stable, it's every week. They bring you the news through hail or high water, while using their tails as their own fly swatters. So sit on down and laugh till you poop, cause it's time again for Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop.
One of the longest opening themes in the history of opening themes. This is Glenn the Geek.
And this is Helena B. And welcome to episode 500, our 10th year anniversary episode of the flagship show on the Horse Radio Network, the Stable Scoop Radio Show.
Hey, Helena, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much. It feels so good to be back.
It's nice to hear your voice again. Before we get started, let me give a shout out to Robbie Mattern, who is the one that did that theme for us that we played for 9 years here on the show. He did that, and we had that from going into episode number 1. We had that at the very beginning, and things were different back then. We're going to talk a lot about that. But the themes were a little longer back then than they are today in podcasting. And, we tried to get rid of that theme, didn't we? About 4 years in, we got sick of it. And we had so many complaints, we had to bring it back.
Yes. So you brought it back as a shorter version.
Yeah, we shortened it up, but we brought it back because people were complaining that it wasn't there. So.
But we were like, we can't listen to it that long anymore. All right, the compromise was cutting it down.
We thought we needed a full-length song when we started back then, and that was mostly to give us time to just get things organized. Well, it was different.
I'm kind of impressed that you remembered Robbie's name. Like, you spout that right out this time.
I know. I worked with his mother for years, and that's how I knew him as a teenager, and then he got into music in his 20s, and then when we needed a theme, he was the only one I knew. So that's why I contacted him. He's the only one I knew that could play guitar and do it.
Well, it's perfect, actually. It's the perfect... It just so perfectly summed us up and the show.
It did. It was a great theme. It really fit. It really did. It wasn't like it was bad. It was just a little long.
Yeah.
But welcome back. It's so nice to have you back. And you're back to podcasting full time over there on the, what is it? What is your network again?
The Sparkle and Boom Podcast Network.
Sparkle and Boom Podcast Network. And of course, you do that Newport show with Buck and a couple of others there on the network. And it's good to see you back full time.
Thank you very much. It is beyond wonderful to be back. I didn't realize how much I loved podcasting until I had to step away from it.
Well, this show's a lot harder without you, I can tell you that. It hasn't been as regular as the listeners will tell you without you. But we get a lot of questions from listeners all the time and from auditors who are new auditors and have been around for a long time about how it all started. So I think, this anniversary of the 500th episode, this is August 8th. Of this year, which is coming up in a couple of days, will be our 10th year anniversary. Our first episode of the Stable Scoop Show went out on August 8th. Of 2008. So we are 10 years heading into our 11th year. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
It is. It's a long time.
And we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I'm not sure we still do, but we really didn't back then. We were kind of making it up as we went because nobody knew what they were doing, really.
We were blazing trails. And and not just in podcasting. I think back of what I was doing 10 years ago, both in the saddle and behind the microphone. And I'm lucky I'm alive.
Well, one of the conversations that we both had for a long time was what gives us the right to do a show about horses. You were more qualified than I certainly was. I mean, but you weren't a top level rider. We went through those conversations. We talked about this a lot before we did our first episode. Do we have the credibility to do a show? And we finally just settled on, we're just going to be who we are, and we're like everybody else, right? Isn't that what we just said? We're like everybody else, so we're just going to ask questions that everybody else would ask.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, I think, what contributed to the success was because we weren't preaching to anybody. I mean, there were some things that we knew and that we were confident about, but it was more our curiosity, I think, and our fearlessness in asking questions and reaching out to people because we just wanted to have conversations. I mean, that's you, that's me, that's Jen. We like to connect with everybody. We just want to make friends wherever we go. And who better to make new friends with than horse people?
And I think one of the things that we have that even I listen to podcasts that are coming on today and they don't have it, and they're doing interview shows, and it bothers me, is they just don't have a natural curiosity about everything. You literally have to be a really good interviewer. You have to be curious and truly interested in everything and anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of experience at it, like, going to a cocktail party or a dinner or even a networking event, looking somebody in the eye, shaking their hands, and having a genuine intent on getting to know that person. I don't know if that's something learned. I mean, maybe if it's practice, is it experience, or is it something that's just in you? But you take that from real life and then you put it into podcasting. And I think that's what makes for a good show like ours.
I think it's in you, to be honest. After dealing with a lot of podcasters now over the last couple of years asking for help, I think it's in you, but it can be improved. Like you and I have obviously improved over 10 years, hopefully. And it's got to be in you. That innate curiosity is something I think you're born with, or I think it's hard to fake that.
You might be right there.
Yeah, I think
it's definitely hard to fake. But some kids outgrow the asking why about everything. Well, why? Why? Why's that? Why's this? Why's that? You and I didn't outgrow that phase.
Oh, you especially. Oh, my God.
It kind of annoys people. That's why podcasting is my safe place.
That's why you and Jennifer, my wife, are best friends, because she's that way, too.
It's true. Well, that was the inspiration for the show. Is Jen and I would be sitting in the feed room at Myopia at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, and we would be talking about, I don't know, what brand of feed we were going to buy and the hay that month and, whose shoe fell off. We just had these really intense conversations that we could have had all day long had it not been for the fact that we had 22 horses to take care of. And that was it. That was the scoop. Like, what's the scoop this week? And that was really the inspiration for Stable Scoop.
And that's how it got its name too. We bounced around a bunch of names, and there weren't a lot of podcasts back then about horses. I don't know. There were a couple.
I don't think there are any.
They didn't last long if they were around. And of course, remember back 10 years, everybody, you didn't have your iPhone. You weren't listening on a smartphone. You were listening on your iPod, which you had to hook to your computer and download the episodes. You were not listening because the iPhone came out after that.
I completely forgot about that.
Or you had to listen on your computer. That was the only way you could listen.
Hence the name podcast.
That's right. And so that, you weren't listening the other way.
How quickly we forget. If you remember correctly, after 6 months of doing this, we had like 12 regular listeners, literally like 12 regular listeners. And then it started to pick up. And it was I think one of the big barriers was, one, educating people how to find a podcast that nobody knew. That's why we called them radio shows. We used to say it's online radio because nobody knew what a podcast was. Yeah, we were educating the general public. That was painful.
It was really painful trying to explain it every time. Boy, things are so much better 10 years later.
Kind of so much better.
One of the questions I get all the time is, and especially from auditors, is did you have, and other podcasters, did you have the idea for a network when you first started your first show all those years ago? And I have a sound clip that's going to kill Helena because this is from episode number 1, and it answers that question. And the sound has gotten better too. Let me just clarify that as we play these clips. Here we go. This is Glenn the Geek.
And this is Helena B. Welcome to the introductory episode of the Stable Scoop Radio Show. The Stable Scoop Radio Show is part of the Horse Radio Network and can be found online at horseradionetwork.com.
You can also go directly to the Stable Scoop Radio Show at stablescoops.com. Hey, Helena, it's so good to be on the air with you again.
Oh, same here, Glenn. Boy, did I miss
long time.
recording.
I know. It's been, about a year since we were on the Talking Equine Network.
Has it been that long?
I think it has. I think it's been about a year. I'm going to interrupt there. We actually did a show for about 6 months together called the Talking Equine Show before that, and that was very short-lived. That was in the days when nobody knew how to listen. That was back in 2006, I believe.
It's funny that you bring up that show because in one of the podcasters groups that I belong to online, someone had asked if you ever had a major guest on your podcast and forgotten to hit the record button. I was like, ooh, me? Yes. Gold medal Olympian, Talking Equine Show, yes. God of all things horses.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
Yep. We had to have him back.
Yes.
Here, let's continue.
Well, that was a year too long. It's good to be back on the air and chatting about horses again.
So I think there'll be some people very happy to hear us back and then some not so happy.
I think my husband is one of those not so happy ones.
Let's talk a little bit about the Horse Radio Network and what it's all about. The Horse Radio Network is going to be, this is the first show on the network, is going to be a series of shows all about horses. We're going to cover many different topics, subjects. We'll have shows that are specifically for specific disciplines. We're just doing all kinds of different things as far as the shows are concerned. They're all going to be fun. If anybody knows us, they know we don't take ourselves too seriously, and it's going to be a bit of an irreverent look at things. Now, the Stable Scoop Radio Show, talk a little bit about what we're doing specifically on this show. So I'm going to interrupt again. So yes, to answer the question, we did plan on the Horse Radio Network from episode 1 of the Stable Scoop show. But I think that Stable Scoop was the only show on the network for about a year or longer, until Chris came along with the eventing radio show.
Well, and also World Equestrian Games wasn't far behind that.
It was right behind that. I think it was eventing and then World Equestrian Games. So that answered that question. Now, one of the things we tell people in podcasting is you're going to start a show and then it's going to change. Whatever you planned on is going to go out the window after about 20 episodes, and you're going to change it because the audience is going to tell you what they like and don't like, or you're going to figure out what you like or don't like. And so that happened here too. This is what we had planned on doing on Stable Scoop.
Okay. Stable Scoop Radio Show is going to be a weekly show that will air every Friday. What makes this different than anything else out there is that it's put on by regular horse people for regular horse people.
The regular horse people.
We're going to talk about it's different than the Talking Equine Show, which is, as Glenn said, the last show that he and I worked on, which focused on interviews with big name riders. So Stable Scoop is at the other end of the spectrum. It's going to be more of a variety show, and we'll have lots of cool segments. We think you're really going to love it. It'll run the gamut. Everything from news to stable spotlights, websites of the week, listener emails, and a whole lot more. Glenn, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about...
So there you go. We got rid of the news after about 10 episodes because we got bored.
We did get bored.
That went out the window. I don't even remember what the stable spotlight was, so that obviously went out the window. But yeah, but it's true of almost every podcast. You start, especially back in that day when we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know what we wanted to do, really. We knew kind of what we wanted to do, but we didn't know what would stick and not stick for us and the audience. And it changed and evolved and got better as time went on, so... It was interesting to hear that.
Thankfully, horse people are a forgiving group. for the
Right.
most part.
That's
You know,
right.
they were like, all right, these guys are changing their format again. Whatever.
Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of listeners back then either. Give a shout out to Rhonda and anybody else that has been listening since day one of the Horse Radio Network. We know there's some out there. We know Rhonda's one of them, and I know there's others that have written me over the years who I don't have their names. But shout out to Rhonda for
Rhonda in particular, who I've yet to meet in person.
Really?
And yes, I've not met Rhonda in person, and I've only met 2 listeners in person. So I need to I need to say, Rhonda, we have to meet.
well,
Come to Newport.
So things have changed, haven't they? And podcasting in general, there's so much easier to listen to. There's so many more shows out there. So as for some numbers, we have over 1 million downloads. We've done 500 episodes. We've had, as best as I can guess, around 750 to 800 guests over the time. We've laughed and we've cried and we've been through a lot personally. I've probably moved 4 times. You've probably moved 3 times. A divorce, a remarriage. I've been through several jobs and then made this a full-time job.
Surgeries we've had.
Surgeries, multiple with both of us. Accidents. Yeah, I mean, we've been through so much in our personal lives over this 10 years. But one of the things I was very proud of is we always got the show out. No matter what was happening, the show went out.
Oh my God, I was miserable so many times when I sat down in this chair to start recording. And literally within 2 minutes, my spirits were so uplifted just by being in this space, in this mental space with you and knowing that our listeners were out there.
There were a few times I just said, Helena, shut up and do the show.
He really did. He really did. If he could have reached through the mic and smacked me in the forehead, he would have. He did. He did the virtual version of that many times. Many times.
I also discovered when I was looking back, there were 2 companies that actually joined us in the first year. And again, we had virtually no listeners, but they took a leap of faith as sponsors, and that was Equestrian Collections and Kentucky Performance Products. And Equestrian Collections got bought out eventually by Horse Lovers, and we have Horse Lovers as still a sponsor, and Kentucky Performance Products is still a sponsor. So our first 2 sponsors are still with us 10 years later.
That's amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing. But I'm learning the power of sponsor partnerships and loyalties and establishing a genuine connection, not only with the people who are listening to your podcast, but the companies that support it. That's a real relationship. It's kind of a fascinating and warm, fuzzy feeling thing, because businesses feel so separate and they feel so clinical and corporate. But they're not. They're just groups of people who are trying to make a living. And when you're a podcaster, you tap into that human side of the business. And when that happens, you get relationships like the ones we have with Kentucky Performance Products and now Horse Lovers.
So thanks to Karen and Chris for putting faith in us all those years ago. And of course, all the other sponsors that have over the years and currently all of our auditors who help support all the shows. We appreciate that as well. Well, for this episode, we kind of picked our top 10. I picked 5 and Helena picked 5. We have some clips to play for you from some of our top 10 episodes. This was really hard. And I'm sure we're going to talk about others as we go along the way because there's been so many. I think the one thing that really has developed through all of this is friendships. We have the Templeton Thompsons of the world and the 100 others I could name, a lot of who became hosts after being guests on our show.
Yes.
And have their own shows now. So, and I'm not going to start naming all of them. Templeton came into mind because I just played one of her songs today. So, all of the people that we met, and we're going to talk a little bit about in these top 10 along the way that really, truly have become our friends and our friends of the network, our friends of Helena and I's. And it's just those cool relationships are what has made this so worthwhile doing, as well as the relationships with our listeners.
One of my favorite things about doing Stable Scoop is the amount of new information that came across my desk, the amount of horse information, the amount of knowledge that I gained, not only in talking from our guests, but in researching a lot of the topics that we covered. And people say to me now, how do you know so much about horses? And the first thing I say is, well, I really don't know all that much because the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. But second, I've been in this industry for, seriously, professionally for 10 years, at least 11 years. And I have spoken with countless numbers of people who have way more information than I do. You learn a lot. And I feel like a better horse person because of it, and a better human being because of it. So, to me, that's irreplaceable.
750 of them over the last 10 years. You're going to learn something along the way, right? Well, one of our first episodes, and I think probably my all-time favorite, simply because it was the first time I was able to actually talk about fox hunting in any way. And this was episode 3. And I love the title, Bourbon, Fox Hunting, and Equestrianism, because really that's how life is for me. Let me read can I read the opening read the
paragraph?
Opening. Yeah, this is what we talked about. And then I have a little clip of you lighting up, talking about fox hunting. All
right. So the episode opener read like this. Join us as we take you on a wild ride with fox hunting talk to one of the most beautiful spots in America at the Maker's Mark Secretariat Center. And your faith in the youth of today will be restored as we speak with our blogger of the week. She is one articulate teen. That was an inspirational episode.
And it really was. And it was our 3rd episode. So it was back in it was September of 2008. And here's a little clip of Helena lighting up to talk about one of her favorite topics. And again, our sound was not terrific back then. We've improved a little, I hope. And it's interesting. You live in a part of where you ride with the myopia hunt.
Yes.
And we were up there one Thanksgiving. My wife actually rode with you at Thanksgiving Day. They have a big hunt that is unbelievable. There will be thousands of people will come out and line the roads watching this hunt go by.
Yes. It is an event. It is wonderful. It is beautiful. It brings tears to my eyes. It's such a feeling of joy. And you know what? All of the horses that go out on our hunt, the hounds, people, everybody enjoys themselves. They have such a great time. What's different about myopia is that we're a drag hunt. So we don't actually hunt live quarry. Our hounds are trained to follow a scent.
Probably if they saw a fox, they wouldn't know what it was anyway.
But you know what? In Massachusetts, we don't have a lot of open space to have live hunts. There are some live hunts here, but because we just don't have the contiguous open space to follow an actual live animal.
Right. So there you were, first time, got to talk about it. You were so excited too. I remember that.
I was so excited. Well, the conversation had opened because of the battle that was happening in the UK between fox hunting enthusiasts and what they call the antis, right? The antis, those who are anti-fox hunting, the animal rights people. And so I felt like it was important to make the point that we don't necessarily kill foxes here in the United States. It's all fox chasing, and that our hunt in particular was drag. There were no foxes involved at all. But it doesn't detract no matter what kind of fox hunting you do, it doesn't detract from the joy. Oh my God, the joy. My heart it's still to this day swells.
Yeah, you and my wife both. You both, for sure.
And we actually, in our new house, we have a lot of fox around here. I am getting to know them. Of course, I feed one of them, so he comes to the backyard. He has his breakfast right out there outside our deck.
Are they red fox?
They are. Yep. And they're really cute. To watch them play when they don't know you're looking, they are ridiculously adorable.
The one that lives in our back, we have one in our back field that lives out there. He has for years. And he had a family the one year. He had 2 little cubs and a wife. And now the wife is gone. They got divorced. But I was surprised how tiny they are.
They're small.
Yeah, they're little red foxes are little red fox. They're like a big cat,
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're as limber. They'll sit on top of the fences. It's so weird to see the foxes sitting on top of a fence.
Yep.
It's really cool to see them. Well, we can't do this. My first pick has to be this one. Because let me just get the name here. Susanna said today that the first ever episode that she listened to on the network and it got her hooked was this one. It is my number 1 pick, episode 293, and it was called Flexible Nuts. The fact that Susanna listened to this episode first and then came back, I'm amazed. Let me read the description. Ellie O'Brien joins us, who I'm still friends with. She's in New Zealand, with a training tip on lateral flexion. And Kat from Eat Your Tart Out, which was a blog about food, and she used to come on every single month with a recipe. We love Kat. With a recipe for chocolate cinnamon almonds, and also the 9 rules for naked dining. And it wasn't the almonds that got everybody going. It was the naked dining. And it still is listed by many, many listeners as their number 1 episode ever on Stable Scoop. And let's listen to a little bit of that. Much to Helena's chagrin, because it embarrassed the heck out of her.
Oh my God.
This is an etiquette guide to nude resorts. Now, I don't know how often any of your listeners are going to be going to nude resorts, but just in case they find themselves there, this is the opportunity to learn how to correctly behave.
I have a confession.
What?
I've been to a nudist resort before.
Really?
For a week.
Are we allowed to talk about this on the air?
For a weekend, I was at a nudist resort. Before Jennifer,
weekend?
This is pre-Jennifer. Jennifer knows about this, so I'm not going to get in too much trouble. Yes, I had a previous fiance when I was in my young 20s who went to nudist resorts.
Whoa. You were engaged before Jennifer?
Yes, I was. Yes, thank God that didn't work out. So she, her family did as well. So she had been going a long time. So I actually went with her one weekend to a nudist resort in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. And we stayed the weekend. They had little cabins and stuff you could rent. And then they had camping, and they had all the
Naked
amenities.
camping? Are you kidding me?
No, a lot of people camped, and then they pool, and by the way, it isn't a cliche. Volleyball is very popular. They had a volleyball tournament against another nudist camp that weekend.
I need to go now. I need to go.
She brought it up.
I don't know why this is so funny. It just is. But the first number 1 rule of etiquette is towel on. Naked butts at the table are a big no-no. So apparently this rule is telling you that you need to bring towels with you if you're going to be sitting in a public place.
Actually, yes, it's required there. They tell you when you check in, you must have your towel and you must carry it with you at all times. You actually carry your towel all the time. And any place you sit, you must put your towel down.
Thank you, towel gods. Okay.
Kat is regretting it for bringing this up.
I kind of am, but it is funny. I mean, it's where else can you talk about something like this?
Than on our show.
Exactly.
Yes. I apologize to all the listeners. If you'd like to turn it off now, please feel free. Come back next week. So there you go. There's a little clip. Flexible Nuts, episode 293.
I forgot how funny that was. I'm sweating.
She went through all 10 too. That was only about 2 minutes of the 30 minutes we spent talking about naked dining.
Thank you, towel gods. That was funny. Oh, I'm dying over here. I'm trying not to crack up because I'm like, is he taping me right now, or are we just listening to the clip? Oh, God.
That's probably the episode we hear about the most from listeners that have been around a while. That's the one.
I wonder why.
That's the one they remember. All right. What was your next pick?
My next pick was my heart. The Tack and Habit show. The first time we introduced Tack and Habit to the world.
I bet you many listeners don't know about that.
No. It was embedded into, essentially was episode 91. And I'm just like a giddy little schoolgirl in the opening of this episode. My absolute joy over the birth of this show and its content is so clear. You want to play the clip?
Yep.
Okay.
You and I have both been in retail forever, and now we finally get a show to talk about stuff.
Yes. And it's fun. I like the name, and I like that we get to do more chatting.
And you did a terrific job with the logo, by the way.
Thank you very much.
The logo is really cute. Helena designed the logo, so if you like the logo, send Helena an email. She really did a cute job. It actually looks like us, I think.
It's us. That's us. If you ever want to know what Glenn and I are about, look at the Tack and Habit logo.
And we should explain this show. It's going to be a short little show. I say a short little show. It's going to be a lot shorter than our other show. We do also do the Stable Scoop radio show here at the Horse Radio Network. And this is our first episode of the Tack and Habit radio show.
flatteringly cut. Is that a word? Flatteringly?
I guess.
You know what? Let's make it a word.
Flatteringly?
That's going to be a Helena word.
Helena word?
Flatteringly cut.
We're going to have to see if we can use flatteringly in every episode now.
Coat. Yes, flatteringly. So anyway, it's sort of an alternative to the traditional show coat. And carrots, this particular coat.
Us guys would say it's tight and attractive.
Absolutely.
Yes,
well,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
come on. We wear breeches and we wear,
Yeah, it's sort of like the breeches for the top. It's very form-fitting.
You always had to. You always had to go there. You always had to go there.
It was
You
a
were
show about women's clothing mostly. What was I going to do? I'm a guy.
Well, it wasn't just women's clothing. No, so you cut out the most important part of the clip, Glenn, was that it was about tack, it was about equipment, it was about gear, and it was about apparel. And because, my Princess and the Pea situation, like, I can't stand britches that have a seam.
No, she can't.
And
or anything that rubs her the wrong way, including me.
People. Yeah. And so Tack and Habit was our chance to kind of talk about this stuff. And me also being a fashion lover, I was like, ooh, a black jacket, a green jacket. What can you wear in the show ring? What can you wear out hunting? What can't you wear? Do those boots fall apart after one use? Kind of thing. And, we all talk about our stuff. You're walking down the barn aisle and someone goes, ooh, I love your breeches. And then a 20-minute conversation ensues over, who makes the breeches. So this was an entire show devoted to that kind of conversation. What's not to love?
And we did it several years, actually. We did it for several years. And then we both got busy, or I forget what happened. But
well, Tack and Habit never really went away. We ended up we had too many shows on the networks. We couldn't, the Tack and Habit show was like the redheaded stepchild. We could never really give it enough time. So we really just folded it into Stable Scoop. And it became a segment within Scoop.
And it still is. I mean, we're the auditors review the products now, but it's still a segment in Stable Scoop every episode. So you're right. Yeah. It never did. And I still use the music. So it's still, we're still using it.
Talk about the evolution of a show. We had said in that initial episode that this was not about reviewing products. And now it's all about reviewing products.
Now it's all about reviewing products. That's right. Well, that one of the other things, episodes that I like going way back to episode 27, back in the first year, is when we started, and of course this is dear to my heart for many reasons, because it was the start of the Horse Husbands episodes. It was our first Horse Husband episode, episode number 27. It was called a 12-step program. And you then did a Horse Wives episode right after it. And we did that for many years. We'd do a Husbands and a Wives episode back to back. But let me give you a warning. The next two things we deal with, the next two favorites of ours, you're going to need your tissue box. So I'm giving you that fair warning now. This episode of the first one of the Horse Husbands episode also has a special place in our hearts because we had Greg Tryon on, who was the husband of Amy Tryon, who about 2 years after this episode died unexpectedly. So Greg, the husband, was on, and I have a little clip from that, and I'm playing this, in remembrance of Amy also, so that you can hear how Greg felt about her. So I know, get your tissues ready, but we felt it important to play this clip for you today because these are the kinds of things that do happen in life, and we have a little bit of Greg talking about things. So here is episode 27. This is Greg Tryon. Let's introduce Greg here before we get chatting. Greg Tryon's the husband to an Olympian and one heck of a serious eventer by the name of Amy Tryon. And Amy's just, she's a sweetheart. She was on the show, on our eventing radio show here a couple of weeks ago, and we appreciated that. He has a website at Team Tryon. That's TRYON.com. And, well, Greg, you married into this. She was a serious competitor then.
I always say she had two horses. One was for sale, and the other one wasn't going to do what she wanted, and made some silly comment about wanting to go to the Olympics. And I said, well, yeah, don't we all? And I didn't know she was serious, of course. And
she's been to a couple Olympics, hasn't she?
She has. Athens and the Beijing 2008 in Hong Kong.
And was a gold medalist at one, right?
She was a world champion in part of the world championship team in 2002 in Jerez, the World Equestrian Games. She was a team bronze medalist in Athens. She unfortunately had a hard bounce in Hong Kong, And she was also the individual bronze medalist at the World Equestrian Games in Aachen, Germany in 2006.
So how long have you been married now?
A little over 13 years.
13 years, okay. And you both, one of the other interesting sidelights to your story is you were both firefighters, right?
Correct. I basically, that's still what I do. I'm a battalion chief for a fire department in this area, and which is just east of Seattle. And Amy sort of, after 13 years of being a firefighter in the same department, I sort of said, okay, you're doing 3 full-time jobs. Can we sort of cut back on one? And I made the mistake of not pointing out the one that actually earns money to keep that one.
That was Greg Tryon talking about Amy. I had met her a couple times at Rolexes and things over the years, and I don't know how. I haven't heard about Greg in a long time. I'm going to have to follow up with Greg and see how he's doing. I haven't talked to him in forever.
Yeah, that's a difficult subject to approach.
Yeah.
I was devastated at Amy's passing.
Well, you had a favorite listed here, and I don't even remember where this came from.
I listened to the episode, and you found it online somewhere. This poem. The episode was where is the episode? What? Turtle Yoga.
Yeah.
It was episode 161. We were talking about turtleneck mud turtle sheets. That was our product review. That was the part of the Tack and Habit segment we rolled in. But then you found this poem online, and you were like, Helena, you need to read this. You just need to read this. And I read it, and I cried my eyes out, and I was like, okay, I hope I can do it justice. And then I channeled my inner Glenn Close. I'm like, I have to read this really well. And I guess I did, because a lot of people wrote in about it.
Yeah, this is probably one of the ones we got the most emails about as far as episodes go. And it was this poem, and I've played it a couple times since, but not lately. So I'll keep the tissues out. Here you go. And we had permission from the author to do this, and she was actually thrilled. We actually interviewed her, remember? We had her on to talk about it. Yeah, and one of those many episodes. Here we go. It's called I Hung Up My Bridle Today, read by Helena B.
I Hung Up My Bridle Today by Chris Garrett. Yesterday, for the first time, I was too tired to ride. Yesterday, for the first time, I was afraid I would be hurt if I was thrown. Yesterday, for the first time, I realized I was old. Yesterday, for the first time, I had to face that I could no longer keep up. Yesterday, for the first time, I felt my heart break. Yesterday, for the first time, I turned my back on my friend. Yesterday, for the first time, I knew I was done. Today, for the last time, I felt warm, braided leather in my hands. Today, for the last time, I released the buckles on the girth and watched my girl sigh. Today, for the last time, I slowly dropped the bit so it wouldn't hit her teeth. Today, for the last time, I buried my head in her soft, warm neck. Today, for the last time, I tracked hay and horsehair into my house. Today, for the first time, I cried after my ride. Today, for the first time, I felt my hands shake as I set the saddle on its rack. Today, for the first time, I hugged my young trainer a final goodbye. Today, for the first time, I waited for the new owner's trailer to arrive. Today, for the first time, I did not hear nickering when I opened my back door. Today, for the first time, I felt worse leaving the barn than I did when I entered. Today, for the first time, I had no one to check on before going to bed. Tomorrow, for the first time, I can stay in bed longer. Tomorrow, for the first time, I won't be able to fly on 4 legs. Tomorrow, for the first time, I will regret letting her go. Tomorrow, for the first time, I will be angry at myself. Tomorrow, for the first time, I will cry the day away. Tomorrow, for the first time, I will be glad to die. Day after tomorrow, for the first time, I will know I was wrong. Day after tomorrow, for the first time, I will defy all the opinions. Day after tomorrow, for the first time, I will ignore my old bones. Day after tomorrow, for the first time, I will bring my friend home. Day after tomorrow, for the first time, I will be reborn. For the rest of my life, I will have a horse in my yard. For the rest of my life, I will ignore the well-meaning advice. For the rest of my life, I will bury my face in her soft neck. For the rest of my life, I will let my soul fly. For the rest of my life, I will never be alone.
Well read, my friend. Well read.
That was very dramatic. Oh, yeah. Oh, my
well
God.
read. Well done.
Yeah, that was, had that conversation a couple of times with
Yeah.
myself.
Yep. All of us have. I mean, when we've sold horses or lost horses or for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. We're busy building a backyard so that we can have our horses back in our backyard.
And you're close, right?
We're close. Yes, we're close. We're shopping for gates right now. It is a different life when you wake up in the morning and you don't have a 1,200-pound animal to feed or care for. It's a sense of purpose. It's a sense of purpose that's greater than many things.
Well, you will soon. Well, one of the things that, and we'll have to, I don't know if we'll be able to play all the rest of the clips we have. We're going to run out of time, but we'll at least talk about these episodes that we liked and for what reason. One of the clips that I have to play, though, it's required. Rachel wrote to me and said, I know you're doing this episode coming up. And of course, I started when you guys were talking about Perky Jerky. And you better, at episode 500, talk about Perky Jerky. For longtime listeners, as soon as they hear Perky Jerky, when they still see it in the stores, they still go, I know about Perky Jerky. I don't know how Perky Jerky started. This was a product, it's jerky, and you see it in the stores now. You didn't see it in the stores then. I came across it online or something, and we started joking about it, and it became a thing for like a year.
A big thing.
A big thing.
There wasn't an episode that went by that we didn't mention Perky Jerky.
I sent you a case of it, remember? And then
I came home one day and there was a huge box. I mean, huge box, like 3 feet by 3 feet in front of my door. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I opened it up and it was full of jerky. I thought I died. I thought I was in heaven. We had the founder of the company on. Remember, he was this badass guy who hiked mountains and stuff, and he explained how Perky Jerky came to be. He was like a backcountry skier or something, and it actually they developed this stuff for really good reasons, and it was great and is a great product. We just liked it because it had a stupid name, and that's why we picked up on it. Delicious. And now you see it everywhere. I see it in Walmart. I see it in Home Depots. Everywhere I go, I see Perky Jerky now. And I credit us for helping bring the popularity of Perky Jerky up. It's true because we kept talking about it and listeners would write into us and say, I found Perky Jerky in my store. Remember, it was only in like a Blockbuster? It was only yes, it was Blockbuster. You're absolutely right. That's the only place it was where you could buy it online on their website. That was it. Blockbuster doesn't even exist anymore. I know. Perky Jerky does. Do you remember when we crank called? I don't have time to play the clips, but do you remember when we crank called the company? So I do. Behind a microphone making crank calls. We're a bunch of jerks. Do you want to hear that? I can play that quick. I do have the crank call we made. Go ahead. All right. So let me see. We should call them right now and say, Perky Jerky people. Let's do it. Trying to help you. Let's do it. They even have a link that says be a jerk. Well, we're jerks. Of course we are. We can qualify for that. Perky Jerky is your brand. What does that mean? It means we want you to share in the excitement, hilarity, and success of Perky Jerky. Oh, really? Then call us back. All right, that's it. Let me just, we're going to call them right now. Using home and they never call you back. All right, you want me to talk? Of course. Okay, here we go. You're the schmoozer in the family.
Calling Perky Jerky. Please leave your name, phone a brief message, and someone will contact you shortly. Thanks and have a perky day.
At the tone,
That was
please
cute.
record your message.
That was cute.
When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hi, this is Glenn and Helena from the Tech and Habit Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, and we have been talking about your product for months and months and months, and we've been trying to get somebody on the air, so we thought we'd just try and call today while recording the show, because we love your product, and we can't get anybody on to talk about it, and now we come on here and we see that you have turkey perky jerky.
And we want cases of it. And we want
That's
all our
right.
friends to have cases of it.
So we would like you to email me at Glenn with 2 N's at horseradionetwork.com, and we would love to get you on the air to talk about perky jerky, because you have to be the product we have talked about the most in all of our shows. And they did. They wrote to us, and the guy who founded the company came on the air. Amazingly enough.
Well, hey, their company was about jerks.
That's right.
We were a perfect fit. It just, it was sad it took them so long to realize that. Love that. You're like, let's do it. And I was like, okay.
You
Let's
talk.
jump up a bridge next.
You talk.
Whatever Glenn says. You talk. You talk. You go.
And almost every guest we ever talked to was like, no, you lead. No, you lead. No, you lead. No,
I know.
you lead.
I know.
All right, so let's run through the last 4 of our favorite episodes real quick. You picked episode 292.
Episode 292, Healthy Barns and Road to the Horse champion Jim Anderson. This was one that I did with Jennifer. I loved when Jennifer had to guest host. I missed you, but I loved having a chance to chat with Jen because that was the inspiration for this whole show. But what I really loved about this particular episode was talking to an actual architect whose business it was to design top-of-the-line barns. And so John Blackburn Architects, we had John Blackburn on. He had just written a book, right? And we actually got to pick his brain about what goes into the healthy design of a barn. If I could change my career again for the 17th time, I would be a barn consultant. I built 3 so far. Well, built 2 of my own, contributed to the renovation, essentially the rebuild of a 3rd. I would do it. I would do it in a minute. What doors, what latches, where to put, how to orient it on the lot, airflow. And John Blackburn was like that inspiration. It was amazing.
Well, the only time Jennifer didn't complain about having to host a show, which she really is introverted and doesn't like to do, it was when she was doing them with you. Then she never argued.
Yeah. Then we always knew that was an editing nightmare on the other side because Jen and I would just go on and on.
Yeah, I'd have to cut half of it out.
Yeah, I know. Not sorry.
As I talked about earlier in the show, one of the neatest things that's come out of doing this show is the friendships we've made. And so episode number 92, Competitive Trail Riding and One Dangerous Woman, was one of my favorites. And that's because it's the first time we met Tammy Sarantz. And, of course, Tammy went on to be host of the Western Radio Show. She's one of the organizing people of Road to the Horse. I see her all the time. She's good friends. I talk to her all the time and still love Tammy. And, again, that is one of the coolest things to come out of doing our show is the friendships we've made. And a lot of people become hosts on the shows because after they were done, Helena and I went, they should have their own show. They were so good. And Tammy was one of those people.
We had ideas, we had ideas for shows and we would entertain guests and have some, in the back of our mind, kind of assess how well they did. And we were pretty good, we would say that person would be a great host. And sure enough, and Tammy was wonderful. Yeah, and let me tell you, that is one strong, smart, big-hearted woman. She has been through a lot. She's an inspiration and should be every horse person's role model. She's good stuff, Tammy.
She really is. And you're right. She has been through a lot. And besides, where else can you get an Australian Southern Texas accent?
You could not have been happier than to have met Tammy.
She's great. Now, your next pick was what? Your final pick.
So my last favorite episode was 443, Retraining Girthy Horses and Happy Dog Ranch. And that was about trainer Angelo Talatin, who was teaching a technique for dealing with girthy horses. I loved it. I'm a big fan of his. And it's really just conditioned response, clicker training type of training. Only Angelo doesn't use the clicker. It's just conditioned response. But I loved it because the simple training tip that I learned from him created instantly happier horses on cross ties. So I, of course, became a lifelong fan.
And again, that represents a lot of the shows that we did that really had training tips and educational side to them.
Yeah, no gimmicks, just basic science behind training our horses.
Well, we met Monty Roberts through this show, too. And look at
no
the
gimmicks,
relationships.
just basic training.
You did his Equestrian Legends episode.
I did.
Yeah, and now look at Jamie's one of his almost master instructors, and Debbie has her own show, and his daughter has her own show on the network. So again, those relationships all started on Stable Scoop.
I learned so much from those episodes and from their Equus University, his online teaching program. And my daughter, I teach everybody I know how to join up with their horse. And they're like, where'd you learn that? I just give them the website address. I'm like, here you go. Get started.
And that's Horsemanship Radio if you want to listen to that on the Horse Radio Network. Well, my final one is something that we do every year. We started it back in episode 123. And it was on 12/22 of 2010. So 8 years ago we started this. And that's the annual All Hosts episode. And we do that every Christmas time where we get all the Horse Radio Network hosts on. And these are all the shows that we own. We eventually we got so big we couldn't do it with all the hosts or there'd be 35 people on. It was all the shows that we owned. And now we've done that for 8 years. Some of the years were technologically challenged because we had to get so many people on and nobody had great connections. It was just terrible. But that's improved over the years as well. But it was so much fun, and it is so much fun just to get together with everybody once a year. And you would get to talk to hosts that you'd never talked to all year long, Reese and Philip and everybody.
I should have put this on my favorites list because it was favorite. And we all would have like a little cocktail, and we recorded in the evening. Usually we record shows during the day, but these episodes were recorded in the evening. So it did feel celebratory.
It was really a lot of fun.
And
it is.
And then Wendy came on, and she was like my soul sister. I'm like, Wendy, I really miss Wendy. I miss.
Well, if there's a party and Wendy walks in the room, that's it. She's the life of the party. And it doesn't matter whether it's on the air or in person. If Wendy walks in a room, she is the life of the party. There's just people like that, and she's one of those people.
She truly is.
So, All Hosts episode for sure. There are so many other things that happened on Stable Scoop over the years. We met so many cool people. We talked about so many weird, unusual things in the horse world. I mean, we really did talk about unusual stuff, as well as meeting some of the neatest people in the horse world. It just, when you look back at the list of the 750 guests we've had, there are who's who of the horse world. And some were not big when we talked to them, and now they're big, So it's kind of neat to see the growth, too, of many of them.
Yeah. I and friends, like a lot of the Stable Scoop fans became personal Facebook friends with me, and we still connect. We post things, every time somebody from my Stable Scoop world posts something on Facebook, I have to like it with a heart. I have to love it. I can't just like it. I'm like, no, I don't just like this. I love this. I don't even get to see these people in person, but there is such a warm connection. Even if it's virtual, there's such a warm connection with these people. It will never go away. Facebook could come and go. Google can come and go. The internet can come and go. And somehow I feel like the Horse Radio Network connections, the friendships, will reform. We'll find each other somehow.
Well, I think 80% of my friends on Facebook are listeners.
Yeah. Well, you get a chance to meet them in person. I mean, you went on cruises together. You have all kinds of stuff. Yeah. How was it meeting?
Oh, do you
cool. Remember?
We had a great time.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
From the first few times that you met people at Rolex, I think that was the first time you actually had listener meetup.
9 or 10 years ago.
Okay, right?
And WEG, yeah.
And WEG, to the cruise and the Alaska trip that you went on where you got to meet big groups or, get more intimate with your listeners. How would you describe the difference between those early days and your most recent listener meetups?
Well, I think they know us better. number one.
Yeah.
So when they meet us, one of the things that's still hard to get used to, and you and I have talked about this after meeting listeners, is they know us so well because we talk about everything, in our lives, that we forget that we've talked about that stuff, and they bring it up, and it's like, oh, they know that. Oh.
Yeah.
It catches you off guard because we're just being us and talking about our lives and everything that goes on in our lives. And then all of a sudden you meet listeners, and then we're almost surprised that they know about the stuff. So that's still disconcerting to this day. A little bit.
That happened to me and Buck recently. We were walking down the street in Newport and someone came up and said something. I can't even remember what it was about. Some place that we'd been. Maybe it was a trip to the Caribbean or something. And I was like, holy crap, who are you? And how do you know about me?
Stalking me.
My life. And she was like, oh, I listened to your show. And I go, oh man, duh. But you're just like, whoa, we have more than 12 listeners. Okay. There's people out there, and Buck has a very recognizable voice.
Yes,
too.
he does. Yeah.
So when he speaks, so who's ever in the vicinity knows it's Buck Harris. So that was kind of, it's a little weird. You don't realize the things about yourself that you reveal on these shows. And with, 10 years of Stable Scoop, we revealed a lot.
I'll tell you one thing that has changed, and this was evident on the cruise where we had 40 of us together, was thanks to the auditors and the Facebook group for the auditors. And because it's so active, I felt like for the first time, I knew them. Whereas before, we didn't know the listeners. They knew us. It was really a one-way street. Now I feel like there's a community built around the Horse Radio Network in the form of the auditors, and it's such a good, active, engaged community. Now I feel like I know them. So that was a huge difference on the cruise.
Yeah. One of the things that I find difficult about the auditors group is that there's so many in there now. I'm struggling to keep up with each person's individual stories, which I really liked. I liked being a part of their lives in that way. So I need to make an effort to get back in the group more often. But now that I'm not working for the man, I can do that. But the community is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. So it's kind of nice that you have these little separate meetups that are more local. I mean, we have a lot of fans in the Pacific Northwest. You couldn't get further away from me than the Pacific Northwest.
I know. And what's so cool is everywhere we go, they set up the meetups. When we were in Maryland for American Horse Publications, we had a group of 10 or 12, and some of them drove 2-3 hours. I mean, it's just really incredible.
I think I'm going to do a New England meetup then.
There you go. There's a bunch up there. I know there's some up there.
Well, as soon as our barn is done, we're going to have a barn party. So it may be around the Halloween time frame. We'll see what we can do.
There you go. Very cool.
We'll see what we can do.
Well, people can still listen to you, though. They don't have to miss Helena because you're on the airwaves on a regular basis. So tell everybody where they can find you.
I am. You can find me at thatnewportshow.com. It's a weekly podcast. It's about Newport, Rhode Island, but Helena I can't just live on the surface like that. I got to dig a little bit deeper. So the show is about, if you've never been to Newport, you absolutely have to come. I don't live in this area because Newport isn't a great place. First of all, I don't live in Newport. I live in Little Compton. That's a big secret. We don't want anybody to know about Little Compton except for nature lovers and horse people. But Newport is the place where we go to go out dancing, listen to great music, eat wonderful food. It is such an amazing place. The only thing that's missing is like Olympic-sized equestrian facilities. So the podcast is about what makes this place so magical, but also about the people. So the way we dig into horse people's lives on Horse Radio Network, Buck and I dig into people's lives here in this community. And we talk about ways in which we can all work on ourselves so that we can be better people, parents, neighbors, you name it. So that's kind of what we do. We have a boating podcast as well on the network called Around the Buoy. So if you fancy yourself someone who likes to boat, whether it's sailing or power, Around the Buoy is new. And I have a couple of others on the horizon that are in the works.
Very good. Well, that's very exciting. And the website one more time.
Thatnewportshow.com. And I would love to see if anybody ever wants to come to Newport. We used to have a guest house, but we don't have a guest house anymore, but we do have some space. So If not that, we get discounts on hotels and stuff. I guarantee you will absolutely love visiting.
We did our honeymoon there. I totally agree.
Yeah, and we'll have a guest horse too. So if you do want to come, we'll go out on Brody and our guest horse. We'll take a nice hack through the Little Compton countryside. We can go down to the beach. We have a beautiful beach. Look up Goosewing Beach in Little Compton, and we can ride on there.
It's very cute. It is. I've been there. It's very cool. And you have a great ice cream store. Is the ice cream store still open?
The ice cream store is currently ripped up. There's a huge, 50-foot hole in the ground right next to it. It used to be a gas station. So they finally had to take out the gas tanks.
So no ice cream right now. But
it was affecting the ice
fumigating,
cream.
Yeah.
You know how much that
ice cream tastes like gas.
Yeah. Gas cream.
Well, Helena, I miss you. Thank you so much for doing this today. Really appreciate it. We kind of figured out before the show started that Stable Scoop is as far as we know, the longest running podcast for the horse world. And thank you so much to all the listeners, to the sponsors over the years, and to everybody that's been involved in this show, the 750 guests, and most of all to you, Helena, for being part of the show and for really joining the ride when there wasn't much to join. We had 2 wheels and not 4. So
well, I'm honored to have been a part of the beginning of the history and of today. I'm so honored that you asked me to come back. This is the highlight of my month. Thank you.
Well, we'll have you back more often now that you're
Good.
Available again.
Now that I'm free,
have a job.
I'm single.
So, all right. If you want to, by the way, if you want to go back, I'm going to put a link to all our favorite episodes we picked. But the only way you're going to be able to listen to them is to go to the website. So I'm going to put a link on the show notes for today's show, episode 500, at stablescoop.com. And you can go back to the past episodes. But the only way, as I said, you're going to get to listen to them is through those links because they're not. We're only allowed to put so many on iTunes. I think it's 50, isn't it? Like 50 past episodes on iTunes, and then they don't let you put any more than that. So when you go to back catalogs like that, you can download them from the website. The episode 1, there's not even a player. Some of those early episodes, because we've gone through about 6 versions of our players over the years. There's not even a player. There's a listen click button. I don't know. But
I
anyway,
to copy the URLs for the MP3 files and paste them into my browser. I'm like, what is this shit?
I know. It's because I haven't had the patience to go back through probably 250 episodes and fix them. So good luck. I hope you can listen. Thanks, everybody, for being with us on this ride. We really appreciate it. It's been a fun one. And thank you, Helena.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm not used to. Can we do our closing?
Yeah, well, that's why I threw it to you to do the closing. But again, you're going to screw it up.
Even though it's a big, you know me, I always forget the closing. Even though it's a big fat lie, I just want to do it for nostalgia.
Okay. You're supposed to say, "Are we done, Glenn?"
No, aren't we going to do the show wrap up?
Oh, I did that already. We're done with that.
No, that's really like old times. If I had a dime for every time Glenn said we did that already, I'm such a flake.
He doesn't pay attention to me at all.
I really don't. I'm out there.
Okay, you ready? You say, "Are we done, Glenn?"
Okay. Are we done, Glenn?
That's it, Helena.
Well, at least there will be more next week. Until then, happy scooping.